We are back to answer more of your questions because you had so many great ones, and thank you for asking them. So we're going to get started answering your questions.
Okay, and for the next question, Jared Jackson _13, and I believe this is Instagram, says, what are some good drills for my GSP to make sure she's working and has a job? It sounds like you may have heard me say that your dog needs a job before. They do. So the biggest thing to think about with finding a job for your dog is you want it to be something that fits into your lifestyle, as well as something that your dog enjoys. We don't want a job that they hate because it's not going to be effective. Sometimes we have to build things that can become jobs or working. But the more that you ask and or slash regiment, I don't know what word I'm thinking. Regiment.
Okay, I was going to say, let me use my telepathic abilities and figure out what you're thinking.
Regiment. So the more that you can set up that way, the better things are going to be. Even to the extent of, doing those. All right, Quest, why don't you just meander?
Don't unplug our audio equipment, babe.
Yeah. So, trying to do things that are going to help develop a working mindset is going to be the key to that. That can be even to the extent of, and we're going to do a video on this shortly. This is on the short docket, but creating more and more ways to work for food, and that's going to help to build food drive, which helps to develop a better desire to work for training sessions and all of those things downhill. But simply spoken, steadiness, obedience, retrieving games are usually keys for day-to-day jobs that dogs really enjoy doing. The next thing is going to be what you have availability for. So if you can throw in some other things of maybe things you're thinking about, I can say, that sounds like a great job. That does not. But the limits are basically endless on what jobs you could create for your short hair.
Good question.
Let's see what we got next. Tony _UMG. How and when do you introduce the heel command during heel training? So I'm going to correct you on the fact that we don't use the term command. We use the term cue. And that goes into our training philosophy in the set of we are teaching and developing and helping dogs to learn, not forcing and breaking and commanding dogs to obey. So if you take that mindset to training, a lot of times it's going to minimize the amount of frustrations and it just puts you in a better mindset for training all the way around. Because when you struggle, you go, how can I help this dog? Not how can I make this dang dog do this? How can I help this dog is a lot better mindset. So when do we introduce the cue heel? The cue command. The cue heel would be after our dog is starting to display the behavior. We don't introduce any cues until we've got an understanding of what we're looking for. So we actually use our Easy Lead to teach all dogs how to heel. And we start that by basically eliminating the pulling behavior. That does not take very long. It's most dogs, it's 8 to 10 minutes. They pretty much understand not to pull anymore. Sweetheart, you got to stop.
You got to stop bumping my microphone.
So once they understand how not to pull anymore, then we actually take that muzzle portion, the halter, head halter portion off of their muzzle, and then we go to a standard slip style lead. Now, a lot of people train with just a standard slip style leash, and we add that extra step because it saves your arm a lot. But once we have that,
I know. I'm trying to make her go lay down, but she just keeps coming for loves.
Honey.
Go kennel.
Okay, so we now have a dog that understands how not to pull. That's not going to help. Turn this way. Turn this way. Well, understand how to help a dog that we have a dog that doesn't pull anymore. Sorry. And we can start to introduce a cue once they're displaying that behavior. So we'll go through the head halter, then to a slip lead, and you can make less corrections because they get, I'm not supposed to pull on lead, and then you need to start utilizing the cue a lot. Start with heel, start walking. Anytime you change directions, you can actually utilize the cue again. Hey, remember, heel. And then all said and done, you're going to pretty much use it when you begin, and then if you stop moving, when you're asking again. I hope that answers the question with all of the
distractions from the dog, because that's life. So we have a really good question from WA_hunting_newbie. What questions should a first-time bird dog buyer ask potential breeders? What information should I be taking away from pedigree charts of litters? It's a little overwhelming for such an investment. So this is kind of a good question and segues back into talking a little bit about the inbreeding and coefficient of inbreeding and unique ancestors and the color charting of those pedigrees that, yes, can be overwhelming when you don't know what you're looking at for sure. And what questions should a first-time bird dog buyer ask? That's also a really good question and very responsible to be thinking ahead and thinking about these things so that you're just not going, puppies, and picking a puppy that's gimme. That's not necessarily going to fit what you're looking for. So first, instead of asking your potential breeder, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions. What am I looking for in a new puppy? What are your priorities? Are you looking for a family dog because you've got young kids? Are you looking for a family dog that can be a great hunting companion? Are you mostly interested in upland hunting, or do you also really want to do waterfowl hunting with your new dog? And what, because I don't think you necessarily said GSP. So what kind of hunting dog do you want? Do you want a flusher? Do you want a pointer? You want a pointer. But ask yourself these questions, and then once you've made your list of these are the things that I want, put them in order. Most people want a dog that's going to be a great family member because they're part of the family 365, and you might get an opportunity to hunt a handful, maybe 2 handfuls of times a year.
Well, shoot, even us, right? So we hunt a ton. I mean, probably drastically more than the average bear. And I would say our dogs are still in the vicinity of 70+% family dog, 30-ish% hunting. Let's go 70-30. You know, I mean, so it's a
like
huge
Quest
part of.
Can't get out of my lap right now because she thinks she's just a lap dog.
But they are a huge part of the family. Huge part of the family.
So you're looking at your priorities. And even for us, livability is always huge. I want a dog that can be easy to have in the house, great with Aiden, great with us, great with the other dogs. So family living is always really important. But on the same hand, I want a dog that we go to the field, they don't quit for us. They hunt all day, they work hard, they know their job. And a lot of that comes to breeding as well as training. But a lot of times, if you know what you want, then you go to the breeders and you ask them the questions. So do your dogs live in the house with you? If a family dog's important and the breeder doesn't keep their dogs in the house, there's a reason for that, because they can't deal with the dogs in the house because they're, excuse my French, a pain in the ass.
Yeah, either that or just it's not a priority, so that thought process hasn't gone into selecting breeding dogs.
Right. If they don't have them in the house, that just might be because they have more of an old school mentality. But then, like Ethan said, that doesn't necessarily mean those dogs won't be good family dogs, but the breeders haven't put that into the thought process of specifically picking dogs for their program.
Yep, exactly.
And then ask what kind of hunting they do with those dogs, what kind of testing they've done with those dogs to prove that they have the ability to be trained to those highest levels of testing. If you're looking at a dog that you want to be able to be a versatile dog that can both do upland hunting and waterfowl hunting, you should be looking at a breed that does well in those versatility tests. If you only plan on upland hunting, looking at a dog that does well through AKC hunt tests or even field trials, if you've got a lot of open quail country that you want to cover some ground, you can definitely look at those different testing to see if they're going to fit what you're looking for. But
the biggest thing to look at the testing themselves for is because that, you know, some people say, and I've heard this cop out from breeders specifically, oh, my dogs are just hunting dogs, tests don't matter. Well, the test gives validation of what the dog can do when you, as a buyer, prospective buyer, don't get the opportunity to live with, raise, and hunt behind the dogs that you're trying to get a puppy from. If you have a buddy or an uncle and you've always hunted with their 2 dogs and they're everything that you want, then get a puppy out of that cross. That's fine. But when you don't get to see those things, you're looking at pictures and you're looking at pedigrees. Those titles give you a better understanding of what the potential of the litter should be.
And I would also say understanding titles would also be very important because
we hear champions.
My puppy's out of a champion bloodline. Well, does that mean they're a field champion or a show champion? Does that mean they are in walking
Master
trials or horseback trials?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that those titles can mean, and understanding what those titles are and how they would apply to what you're looking for would be also something that I would say is very important. And you can research those titles online, Google it.
Most of the time you can just Google them.
Yep. Or reach out if you have specific questions about pedigrees. But a good example of pedigrees would be looking at our website and our dogs from our program. I mean, they have pretty nice pedigrees that have the titles that we're looking for. We don't typically do a lot of field trialing because that's not our game. We like dogs that are a little bit closer working foot hunting dogs. And I don't know if many of our dogs would compete well in those arenas because they're not going to hunt big enough for what people typically want to see, judges typically want to see. So.
Most of the time, no.
So just understanding those titles would be also a really good thing before you select a puppy just based on, oh, it's got a title. Well, know what that title means first. So.
Yeah. So you've decided what you're looking for. You've found a breeder now that is hopefully doing the same things that you're looking for or saying that's what their goals are. You know what these titles are in the pedigrees because you've looked them up. Google, again, is a great way to find that, or just reach out to us and we can help with most of them. And
then I would also say ask what health clearance has been done with your dogs, especially if you're talking about different breeds. There are certain things that certain breeds have a higher chance of having. Yeah. That sounded really weird how I said that. But
some breeds are more predisposed to have issues.
Oh, Ethan, translate. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to say. It just didn't come out as eloquently. So
perfect. So you've, those would be the biggest things. And then the last one that I could say would be the as important as the rest would be feel comfortable with where you're getting the dog from. If you don't, just move on. You need to set up a place that you're going to be able to have the opportunity to have a relationship with and say, I like these people. I like these dogs. I like the idea of this. And then you can stay in touch with them, reach out if you have issues, or reach out just to say, I love this dog and everything else. But go with somebody you feel comfortable with.
As breeders, I love hearing how puppies from our program are doing. We have a specific Facebook group just for people that have gotten dogs from us so that we can hopefully keep track of as many of them as possible, because some people do, fall off the face of the earth and you don't hear from them ever again, which we try and screen our puppy buyers in a sense that we're going to be able to have that relationship with them.
Absolutely.
But we get a lot of questions from people that tell us, hey, I just picked up my 8-week-old puppy. Now what do I do? And I'm like, I love that you feel comfortable asking us for guidance and feel that we're a really great educational resource. But I also question why you don't feel comfortable reaching out to your breeder and asking those questions of them that you just literally picked this puppy up from. I don't know what your puppy was being fed at the other breeder, so I can give you recommendations on what we're feeding, but just cold turkey switching them might not be the best option either. But we get a lot of those questions and I'm happy to answer them. Don't get me wrong, but it always makes me question why you're not reaching out to your breeder first as a resource.
Absolutely.
So really, really great question.
I've got another one here. It says from Shaner Andrew. Instagram question. How do I stop counter surfing? There are a couple different things that can go into how to prevent counter surfing. And our go-to is to prevent them having the opportunity to counter surf. That would be typically we utilize place training in the house. And if you are not actively there to, intervene with the counter surfing itself, we'd say, hey, go over, kennel up, lay down for a minute. And that, again, is creating a job and teaching them to, this is what our expectation is to behave in the house. You need to not be getting into things. And then when you are in the kitchen working on stuff and your dog is interacting and being part of the family, if he tries to counter surf, you have proper timing and you can make a correction there. If you choose not to do those, there are different ways that you could correct that. Or some dogs really just struggle with the idea of it's not an okay thing. Every dog has a different level of drive and desire to complete whatever task is on their mind. And so sometimes it takes different forms of correction. And I would say that the number one that we hear is I put a collar on them and I shock them when they do that. And that is not our go-to. Collar breaking, and again, like we talked about earlier, is our training philosophies would not be ideal. It'd be more like a last case scenario. But place training is going to be huge with that. And then being there, I think most dogs pick up pretty quick on when it's okay to do something, when it's not. And just your presence and having in that situation is going to help curb that. The next, if you have a dog that's really, really sneaky about, even if it's a split second where you turn around to go this way and they're doing it behind you because they know you're watching and not watching. Mouse traps are a pretty good way to have a good quality timing on correction, and they rarely, if ever, even snap the dog.
It's just a startle.
Yeah, they just set off, and then that startles them, and that's perfect timing. So that would be one that we would use, even to the extent of I've seen it used in all kinds of environments for preventing dogs from going near or messing with stuff. I was over at a friend's house, and they had a new mount, taxidermy, and they had mouse traps all over it. It was the first time I'd really seen that, and I was like, you got a mouse problem?
That
just
you don't
around
want
the
new mount?
It was a bear, standing bear. You don't want the mice to get your new bear? I said, no, it's for the dogs. They just put mouse traps around it. It usually takes 1 or 2 days, and then they leave it alone.
It's a little mousetrap minefield.
Yes. So, and the mousetrap, again, doesn't snap them most of the time. I would assume it's a possibility, but mostly just startles them. They go, whew, leave that alone. So those would be a couple things that I would work on, primarily working on place training and not giving them the opportunity to learn to be expert counter surfers.
So that was a really great question that allowed us to segue into this next question from Mark Solobuski from Facebook. I wonder if you could offer some examples of when not to use the e-collar. My guess is many get overused or used in the wrong circumstances. Yes, definitely get used in the wrong circumstances, get used improperly. Like Ethan said, a lot of people say, well, yeah, my dog did this, so I just lit him up. Well, that is definitely not how we want to use an e-collar.
It might work sometimes, but most of the time not in the right way.
And that's it's probably going to cause more problems than it's going to fix.
It's like my dog runs away from me, so I shocked him with the collar, and it was magic. They came back. Well, they were scared.
And they didn't understand what was going on, so they
ran
defaulted
back to
you
you
something.
Or the house for safety, which is going to create more problems.
And it could potentially allow you to not introduce the collar then properly down the road when you need to reinforce something that they've already learned. Yeah. So things and examples of when not to use it. Anytime you're upset, definitely don't use it. That is not how they're meant to be used. They're not meant to light a dog up when they did something wrong. We use the collars to reinforce something the dog already knows. So place training, recall. Sometimes we'll collar condition a dog to sit or lay down. But for the most part, if a dog's doing something that they're not supposed to, counter surfing, then we're going to use the collar to redirect them to something that they do know that is an okay behavior, whether that's calling them back to you or putting them on a kennel, on a dog bed, or if a dog's collar conditioned to heel. We use this example a lot of times. People are out for a walk with their dog. They're coming up on new people or a new dog, and their dog gets excited and wants to jump on those people. Well, I'm not shocking the dog because they jumped up on those people. I would use the collar at the lowest level necessary to get the desired response of getting them back into a heel position and holding them to that heel position so that they don't have the opportunity to go jump on all those other people because they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I'm reinforcing that with the collar.
It's an interesting concept to throw out there, and we can put it in these words, or I often put it in these words. It's basically dogs are extremely good at anticipating everything that you're going to do, everything in training, and the best way to help your dog through training and development is to be better at anticipating than they are. And if you can anticipate their moves and know you're going to come jump on me, or you're going to go try and jump on those people, or you're going to go crazy when people come to the door, you can curb all of those things and basically prevent them from becoming a conditioned issue by anticipating they're going to be happening and setting them up for success by directing that focus elsewhere.
Yes.
All right, we've got time for one more question, and I have a good one that rolls right out. We got one more. It rolls right through the last one, talking about collar conditioning one more time.
Okay.
And that'll be it for this week. So Alexis Dillon said, will having an invisible fence confuse a puppy during collar conditioning? So we're talking about how to use the collar, how not to use the collar, when to use the collar, and how it can be overused and all those things. So it runs right into this. If you're teaching all of these things properly, it should be no issue. But again, our recommendation with collar conditioning is to go ahead and teach the behavior of recall first, then teach with electric fences, teach collar conditioning to recall so the dog has an understanding, and think about your collar more as a form of communication than as a form of correction. And if you think about it that way, that you can utilize the collar to talk to your dog, this very powerful tool that has been developed and fine-tuned over the years from a more barbaric tool that is where it kind of got its bad name to what it is today, a great teaching tool. You can communicate with your dog, and that's going to help you to feel right about when you're supposed to use the collar. But if you have a dog that has a full understanding of collar conditioning to recall, and then start your underground or invisible fence training, you're going to have no issues. Now, the key with the invisible fence training is to do it the way that they say. Put your flags out everywhere. Show the dog. Here's your warning, the beep or the vibrate or whatever it is. And then here's the edge. Don't cross the line. And if you take the time to work that in as well, training, again, it's not magic of figure it out, dog. You're going to have drastically less issues and ultimately a better trained dog in the end.
And one last question from me. This was a good question because other people asked it, not necessarily in the exact same words, but if you watch this and you know what your question was, this will help answer it. From Barry Maydew, how do I train to hold a point? So we had a lot of questions about how do I keep my dog holding point on wild birds and what's the point of a belly collar and lots of questions like that. But this is the most specific question and this is the specific answer. Formal WOA training. So first of all, we try and instinctually teach dogs to point using DT Systems bird launchers. If you haven't seen our multiple different videos on how to start that process with a puppy, we've got a whole bunch of them on our YouTube channel. Check them out. But we use electronic bird launchers to try and instinctually help a dog learn how to point first.
And we actually have those laid out in a very easy location now because people talk about not being able to find all of our videos, or there doesn't seem like there's any way to figure out how to watch them in order. If you go to standingstonekennels.com/links, LINKS, standingstonekennels.com/links. It'll show you a button that takes you to our most recently posted video. And then there are 3 more buttons that take you right to the playlist to watch all of the videos in order. Back to Kat.
So once we try and instinctually teach our dogs to point, if we've got a dog with exceedingly high prey drive that just can't quite get there, they go into takeout mode and they smell that bird and zoom in on them. And through repetition of trying to teach them to be more cautious with that electronic launcher, you're just not quite getting there. Then we will move into formal WOA training, as well as if you do get a dog that's pointing naturally and being very steady, Typically, our next step in their training anyway will be formal WOA training. But I prefer to have a dog show me that behavior first, that they can do it without needing formal WOA training. Then we move into that. And we use our positive pigeon drill as well in conjunction with these other training methods to help get there with these dogs. But we use a belly collar for formal WOA training. There's other methods out there. You can use check cords and WOA posts and barrels and things like that. But we use belly collars. Have we ever used those other methods? Sure. Not every single dog can be trained the exact same way, but the very high majority of them, we use a belly collar.
Yep.
And if you don't know how to formally WOA train a dog, we also have videos on that. So I'm not going to take up a lot of time.
All the videos.
I'm not going to take up a lot of time because I'm getting dirty looks from Ethan for asking and answering another question. But this one was a lot of people's questions about how to hold point longer, things like that. And the answer is formal WOA training.
Yeah, you have a dog that understands whoa, you can say whoa and they stand there. And that helps you catch up or slow them down if the birds are running. All of the things.
Yep. And you're able to, that formal WOA training, they become collar conditioned to whoa. So then they can understand what the collar means in those situations and stand there longer until they're released, whether that's the flush of the bird or you tell them, okay.
Great job, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you guys thank you guys as always for tuning in again to this week's YAWA series.
YAWA. We answered, you asked.
You answered, we asked. We try and do this every week for you guys unless something comes up. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us with your questions, and thank you to everybody who subscribes. We look forward to seeing you next week and answering your questions.
I'm pretty sure you still said you answered, we asked. It is definitely you asked, we answered. Just saying.
I'm the guy with the pink gun.
And I'm Kat, the dog trainer.
Signing off.